in the stages of shock, how does shock look like, please? Yeah.
Tom, do you need to have your video? Do you all need to have our videos on?
Then now we move on to the other questions.
Yes.
Okay.
Tom, do you need to have your video? We are live now.
Do you all need to have our videos on?
Then now we move on to other questions.
Mm.
We're live.
Tom, do you need to have your video?
Yeah, we are live now.
Do you all need to have our videos on?
Then now we move on.
I can share the link with Pastor Mweni so that she can share with the rest of the team or anyone else who will be joining.
Yeah, because I also need to know the live so I can see where do I see the comments of people. So I go to YouTube.
Will we see the comments on YouTube or
Facebook?
Or Facebook.
Yeah. No, for now it's only Facebook. It's only YouTube. Let's begin with YouTube and then as we continue to try and log into the Facebook. But the YouTube app and everyone who is here can see as long as you have the link, you can see the comments as they come in.
Okay, where is the YouTube link? What do you search? I hope you've posted post the live.
I've shared with Pastor Mweni. She can forward to your WhatsApp, but it is also here on the chat.
Mm.
I'm using two laptops.
there you are?
I'm using two laptops. What is the name of the YouTube? Just a link. What's the name of the channel?
I've sent you the link. Grief Café.
I look for Grief Café.
Yes.
Because this one doesn't have my Nini. We've not started yet. How do I go to
Check
the
on
link?
the temp. I've sent it in the WhatsApp group that we have for us.
Sorry, I have to. Send it to me. Email. Have we started? I hope we're not live yet. Oh, okay, what I can do, we can just start. Then when you're talking, I'll go there.
Okay.
Yeah, because
We're
we're
already
8
live.
minutes. Oh, yeah. Yeah. Tom, could
Yes,
you please switch on your mic? We can start off. Hi, good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us. My name is Rosalind Keegan, and I'm sorry for that technicality. There's an age you reach where technology is faster than us, so we had to loop in a Gen Z to help us. But I'm glad you've joined us. Once again, this is Rosalind Keegan. I'm a marriage and family therapist, the founder of Intentional Therapy at Upper Hill. Today, we are going to discuss a very pertinent discussion. A very pertinent discussion on the nation is grieving. When the nation grieves, what happens? Yeah, and joining me is Pastor Edward Ondachi, who is very well known to most of us. He's a mediator, he's an author, and also a trainer. With us is also Pastor Mweni, who's a grief coach, and also the founder of HeartworkA Café, HeartworkA Africa, and Grief Café. And I'm very sure Tom, we're going to see you very soon. Tom Osajo is an award-winning journalist and a communication specialist. So why don't we dive into our discussion? As we begin this journey of understanding grief, it helps us to remember that grief usually unfolds in very many stages. And I know when is going to unfold them more. It's the shock or the anger, then there's denial, then there's the bargaining, depression, and the acceptance stage. And then even after the acceptance stage, the healing part of it. So, and we need to understand that these stages just don't happen simultaneously. They happen of the overlap. So tonight we're going to delve in. How does Kenya, our nation, go through these grief stages? And maybe what we can do, we can start with asking personal questions, because we start from home. And maybe I'll start with the Reverend Ondachi. Yeah. At the national level, you as a pastor, how does this shock stage, look like? You've just received the news. The nation has just received in the news. How does it look like to you? Yeah.
Thank you very much, Rose. What an amazing question. I'm not ashamed to say I'm 56 years old. I was just 9 when, in 1978, 22nd December, when Jomo Kenyatta died. And believe it or not, I still remember how I felt. I still remember the tremor. And I was 9, I didn't know much about death, but I remember the look on the face of adults, my dad especially. To me, my dad was an invincible guy, but I saw him scared, completely scared. On a national level, I remember our neighbors. I remember the estate. We used to live in South B. I remember confusion, and some people were crying when my aunties were told. The news came in parables because they said that one person said that Kenya has lost its eyes. Somebody said that. And as a 9-year-old, I'm wondering, how does that happen? So my first processing of death of a national figure, I was under 10 years old. And believe it or not, on the 15th of October, I woke up in the morning and social media was awash with what appeared to be rumors. And I got that same emotion that I had when I was 9. I had met Raila Odinga a few times, but I can't say that we knew each other, because I think that if he met me on the street, he would remember me. But I felt like I know him. And I also felt the same sense of invincibility that was around Jomo Kenyatta surrounded this man. He was alive on TV just a week ago, and here he is gone. I remember calls coming in, relatives calling, work stops, everything at a freeze, leaders confused, the president lost for words. Our whole nation went into shock and catatonia. People were just frozen. Some people say they are not able to work. Now, it doesn't help that I'm a Luhya, but I'm married into a Luo family. And to them, now my relatives, this is like our father who's gone. And I don't know how to answer this question, Rosalind. It really feels like the nation has lost its soul. Like someone has punched you in the stomach. I think even now, even right now, I'm finding it difficult to believe that Raila Odinga is not alive somewhere. It's hard. It's hard to see it. It's hard to imagine it, because he was a man so full of life and humor. And I think at the back of my mind, I was living for a day when Raila would see justice for his cause. And so the thing which is unfinished in my mind is, did he die too early because he fought so hard? And did he die feeling that life has been unfair to him? And so my emotions are around there. Then when I talk to many people, I realize that on a national level, all of us are feeling like a family who have lost their father. And that is not a feeling you're able to describe. You find comfort in crying together, in talking about him, in remembering when was the last time you saw him. I went on a call with some of my men friends I've known for 22 years, and all of us will remember where we were when we were told that Raila Odinga is dead. We will remember that for a very long time. And I feel like the amount of visits that are happening at the grave is evidence of the fact that our nation is not moving on in terms of this issue. It has been reported that the visits to the grave in Bondo have been booked until January 2nd. And every conversation which I'm having with people is we're asking each other, when are you going? So we are refusing to accept that he's gone. And I like this idea of this call, Rosalind, because even I need to be told how to behave, because I don't know what this means for the future of our country. A lot of people on the ground were feeling extremely helpless and lost. People from Kibera, who are just my neighbors where I live, were telling me now, who's going to be fighting for us? It's like losing a father. And I think our nation feels like we have lost a father. And I don't know how to process that emotion, Rosalind. Rosalind, your mic is off.
Yes, it's a very deep emotion, and later I know we are going to delve in the kind of different kind of mourning people did, from entering the plane to demanding to see Honorable Raila's body. But maybe I'd like to loop in Tom. Tom, are you? Can you switch on your camera? If you can, that would be very nice.
Let me try. Sorry, I'm having problem with the camera, but you can hear me, please?
Yes, we can hear you. As you're working on your
Okay.
camera, maybe you can tell us as a journalist.
Yeah.
We've also had shock as a nation. And
Yes.
I'm very sure, being an award-winning journalist, you've covered a lot of stories. Yeah. When there's shock, when there's loss, could you just give us just a brief view and how you as a person felt, and how the emotion you saw on the ground when you're covering these stories?
Thank you, Rosalind. As journalists, we are told you should detach yourself from the story so that you report objectively. But sometimes it's not possible. You'll get involved in the story because the emotions, people around you are a lot of crying or shouting. You find yourself being part of it. I've spoken to a few of my friends in the media, and most of them tell me that one of the hardest tasks they've ever done in their lives is to break the news that Raila Odinga is dead. Someone like, how do I go on air with this? And the perfect example, some years back when the former vice president, Omalo Kijana, died, I remember as the convoy was moving from JKA, the official photographer was crying all the way. The man is there taking his videos, but tears and the nose is running and is crying. So sometimes, in as much as you have to be professional and detach yourself from the story, sometimes you find yourself being part of the story because and also when you are reporting, you're supposed to take the reader, the viewer there, especially for those of us in print. Someone reading your story should be able to be in Bondo as Raila is being buried. Maybe they didn't see it. And it comes with a lot of responsibility. And actually, some people usually go for counseling after that. And but on and on, the idea is that you should be objective and you should keep focus on the story, but also you should be empathetic when in your reporting, because you're dealing with people's emotions. People have lost their loved ones. Maybe if you speak, maybe talking about Daniel Arap Moi's death or Raila Odinga's death, to most people is a national figure. But apart from that, this person has family, they have children. So we must also take care of those interests of them when we're reporting on the story. Thank you.
Wow. And I just want to add something. What you said is the the reporters who were to report, going on media to report about Honorable Raila's death. Could you expound more about how was that feeling? Because you just said, how will I report this? I mean, why? I just want to because I actually feel it's a very serious, yeah.
Actually, those of my age, I'm basically like Pastor Ondachi's age. Actually, we're classmates in high school, so I add that. We grew up in an era where Raila developed this larger than life image. Actually, most people never believe Raila could ever die. He was immortal in most people's minds. Yeah. So like he's been there with us since we were in high school, primary school. So in part of the history of Kenya. So it's like KICC, Raila has always been there. Then all of a sudden, KICC tumbles. So the shock is there. The process is there. Actually, in the estate where I live, 5 days after Raila's burial, I was walking, going to get my newspaper. Then I meet this lady, and she read the headline now, this post-burial, and she just asked me very politely, "Is it true this man is dead? Ama nizi tu propaganda za serikali?" Yeah, it's true. Yeah. So those kind of things. Yeah, it came with a lot of responsibility, but then you have to move on past your emotion because you have a duty to write what's happening.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Tom. It was a very heavy time, very heavy season. Now, Pastor Mweni, as a grief coach, yeah, and I'm very sure you meet a lot of people going through grief. And all of us have gone through personal griefs. So maybe could you please, if it's possible, just share with us your personal grief. And while you're at it, kindly tell us what shock means psychologically, emotionally, to an individual or a family.
Thank you, Rosalind. That's a very good question because in many ways, we are a grieving nation. Why? Because grief is actually defined as the natural and normal reaction to loss. And it's also defined as the end of a pattern of life as you have known it. So when you think about grief like that, you realize that we need to be able to see grief as way beyond death of a person. But more often than not, we narrow down on death of a person. And as a nation, we are grieving many, many things. Today, we are talking about Baba. But then today we also got news of the death of another of our local heroes. We got news of the death of a musician, a local musician. And again, you see the outpouring of grief in many ways. And at a personal level, I lost my dad a few years back. And the shock of it all, which I continue to live with even today, is the fact that my dad died on the morning of my birthday. And so there's an emotional numbness that comes with that. And it is almost like a disbelief, you cannot believe that this thing that you consider the worst thing that can ever happen, you're now living through it. It almost feels like an out-of-body experience. It's happening out there. And sometimes I feel like the reason why our psyche needs the pace in processing this pain is because one of the functions of the brain is to protect us. And so this buffering, this emotional numbness is sort of like a buffering, so that by the time the picture comes clearly to you, you had time to sort of taking it in slowly. Because when information comes with the bang with which it comes, most of us will get overwhelmed. I mean, when you think about it, when we get news of the death of a loved one, it is not a surprise when people faint. people do faint. People do get so overwhelmed with everything and they faint. So this thing, this need to sort of detach so that you can process is one of the first stages. And then because shock disrupts time and logic and sequence, you always seem to have a disorientation and confusion. So the things that Tom is talking about meeting someone who's asking you, please confirm for me. Now, it's been reported on TV. It's possibly even been reported in the newspaper. They have possibly even watched the funeral because you said that this was post the funeral, but the person is still asking, please confirm that Baba is dead. So there's it just feels unreal. It doesn't feel like there's anything. I mean, is this supposed to be happening? And then there is emotional overload, or muting even, because sometimes again, too much, too overwhelming. So let me mute so that I can process this slowly. I know that when Baba passed on, for me, it got to a place where it was too much. I had to just sort of stop watching TV because I was getting an emotional overload and there were so many other things coming in. And then you have now the other moments where you have what ifs. You get into, sometimes you find that this can lead to protective silence, and then now we have the reality of sometimes our grief becomes embodied. So you start feeling it in the body. You start feeling actual physical reactions to the loss, which is what we call somatic reaction. So you have your heart is pounding, your breathing is shallower, you're feeling nauseated, you're shaking, there is dizziness. And then post that we have insomnia. People are either not sleeping at all or sleeping too much, just disturbed sleeping patterns. We have disturbed appetite patterns. We have all these sorts of things that show up in the physical. And this is also the place where if you have an existing, we know during COVID, we are calling them pre-existing condition. So if you have diabetes, if you have high blood pressure, if you have ulcers, if you have all these non-communicable diseases, we begin to see arise. We begin to see like they spike, the incidences of this spike. There's a fluctuation in your sugar level. There's a fluctuation in your blood pressure. It just goes off because the body is trying to find its bearing in this place. And so all these things are going on because the body is trying to get it, to find balance, because balance, as the body has known it in the past, has been thrown off by this news. Of course, we also have the spiritual perspective of things, where we go into spiritual and existential shock, because sudden death shakes the ground for meaning. It fragments meaning. That's a part where you begin to ask, where was God? This thing is not making sense. Is this all there is to life? All these existential questions now begin to arise. And then eventually, the emotional reactions differ, of course, for everyone, and they shift very quickly. And that is why where you are yesterday may not necessarily be where you are today. And remember, because we are all in this space, we are all very raw. That is why you'll find in this space, it is very easy to have conflict, because I am in my raw space, you are in your raw space. And when you put the rawness together, it's very easy to have conflict. And then when you look at usually we talk about the 5 stages of grief, where you have denial, where you have anger is a real place. And then you have bargaining, you have depression, and you have acceptance. Now everybody is moving in and out of those spaces, because those stages are not static, neither are they prescriptive. So you cannot say now as a nation we are all in denial. No, some people are in acceptance, some people are in bargaining. We are all in different stages. And because of all of us being in different stages, have you noticed that there is such a deep sense of fatigue in the country? Because there is so much emotional weight we are carrying, and we are going through emotional fog. And that actually feels like physical fatigue in the space that we are in as a nation.
Yeah. Oh, Thank you so much. And when you're talking about fatigue of your mind, emotional overload, it takes me back to Gen Z, the demonstrations that were there earlier in the year. For me, I personally shut down almost all my social media because of the emotional overload I had, maybe because of as a mother of Gen Z. So I think with that, I want to bring in Reverend Pastor Ondachi. From your mediation and your leadership perspective, leadership background, how do Kenyans typically process shock, the moment of national tragedy? You can pick different tragedies and just talk about them.
Yeah, thank you, Rosalind. Kenya is, I've been a Kenyan for 56 years. Kenya is really little nations in one country. Kenya reminds me a lot of the US, that there are so many little cultures in one country. And when something is national, it is very difficult to be able to pick out one emotion. So why it's a very complex question is because in so many ways, Kenyans see things through their individual cultures. I'm a Luya, and so Tom is Luo, and a majority of my friends are Kikuyu. Now, when Raila died, there was such an outpouring of Western grief and extended wailing. Within just a few hours, there were people who were rolling on the ground in Raila's current home around Mama Aida. And then when the news came out that Raila had said he needs to be buried within 3 days, the Kikuyu suddenly identified with that quick burying, but the Luos now went into shock about what? A person from Western that soon? So when it comes to something of a tragedy like that, it is difficult to pick out precisely one emotion. It's very difficult because of how our different cultures view things. I've been playing a big explanation role with my friends from Central because they can't understand why there's often, now I'm not talking about Raila only, I'm talking about Kijana Wamalwa, and then Mwai Kibaki, when Mwai Kibaki died, and then Daniel Arap Moi died. You see culture come to the fore. And you see, for Kibaki, as was according to his personality, things were simple and dignified, as followed his, was a president but did not have a lot of heirs around him, and things were simple and straightforward as were done. But for Raila, there's a different set of emotion that was coming out very strongly. And one of the reasons why I'm happy about this call is perhaps to be able to hear, because I've heard so many different versions of how people are processing this death. For Kenyans, and why I feel that for Raila there's been such a great outpouring of this grief is because Raila, I had a national from Zimbabwe saying that even Nelson Mandela was not mourned like this by South Africans. But the reason why he wasn't was perhaps because Nelson Mandela finally did become president. And so people felt like he got back some due for his suffering. Raila did not. And even his detractors and people who were his strong critics still felt that the man has died a very unjust death. in a sense, like before he achieved his dream of presidency, he dies. And then to see a state funeral was a big question to, was this national guilt that our nation was feeling? That finally we felt, let us give him a presidential status which he always deserved. So there we were all tied together by this one emotion of, does he finally get justice? And my favorite program to watch on TV is Newsgang on Thursdays on Citizen TV. And the journalists were not ashamed to say that I think now we can finally admit that this man won an election and it was denied him. And I don't know whether he was speaking for everyone when he said that. But there was this sense of, this thing can tie our nation all together finally. We can agree that he tried 5 times. But if my memory serves me correctly, just 3, 4, 5 months ago, when Raila decided to support the broad-based government, he was under intense criticism, very, very intense. People called him all sorts of names. Gen Zs were very upset at him. They were saying he's a sellout. But finally, when the man rests, you feel like our nation is in this pain. So Kenya is a complex space, Rosalind. I feel like we need to examine more what this emotion means exactly.
Maybe Pastor Ondachi, you can if you can break down the culture of the Luo of the Luo of the Luya culture and how they mourn. And what you saw, was it expected, or if they did not mourn that, would you have been shocked that, because there was a demand of, they have to see the body, they have to touch the body, they have to go to the graveside. You see how they dance on the graveside. Is that for the Luya culture? Is that the way they mourn? Maybe that's how they process their grieving, their shock.
Thank you, Rosalind. Actually, yes, it is. The extent and the pain and the expression of it is typical. And to Luyas, Raila did a very unfair thing. To request that he be buried quickly was a very unfair thing, because there are very many things we may not do well, but Luyas do funerals well. People say, like, what wangushi matanga. You will not find money for a lot of other things, but a funeral money will be found. The other thing that is consistent with a funeral for Luyas is it takes long. No one rushes it. Wait until everybody comes. We wait until everybody from every corner of the country arrives, and we take time to cry. Part of the Luya and Luo culture also believes that every other part of a person's body dies except the ears. And so the ears keep hearing. And so you will be asking yourself, as a person who's departed, and where is Rosalind? I'm not sure whether she has come. And so because I can't see you, I can only hear you. And so Rosalind has to come and mention my name and tell me if it's me who's gone. Ondachi, I'm here. Why did you leave me? How could you have done this to me? And all that. And that's part of our fabric as a culture. And so we mourn loudly. And Luyas have been known even to hire people to cry if you don't, because crying loudly is that expression and that affirmation of our love. Now, do people are normal people. But now when someone is in the stature of Raila Odinga, it's even longer. And I believe that if Raila had not indicated to be buried quickly, even now, he would not have been buried yet. The reason why people wanted to see physically the body, to touch it, to confirm, is part of the fabric of how we do it and how we mourn for long. And for us, after we mourn long, once the body is buried, we are done. And the issue doesn't continue to haunt us again because we've taken time with it. And I think part of the reason why there is this intensity of, I think Mwenye explained it quite well, there is this sense of silence. a quiet pain we are going through is
Yeah.
because we don't know how to process Raila's last wish. Was it a good thing or a bad thing?
Yeah.
I think a lot of people are not sure. It is so anti culture. And for someone who demanded such great respect to say that, we cannot criticize it, but it is such an counterculture to
Yeah.
the depth of who we are. And so many people
Yeah.
don't know how to respond to such a strong thing.
Yeah. Yeah. Yes, the 72 hours was quite a shock, especially from the Western and Nyanza culture. And I must add that when people went to Karen, it's very normal for people from Western and Nyanza when there's a funeral, somebody has died, everyone runs to the homestead. The gates are open and everyone goes in and runs, and it's very normal from Western. Yeah. You want to add something on that, or I can look in.
Tom maybe or Omweni.
Oh yeah, Tom. You can add to that if there's anything about the culture that maybe you want to add. Do you have anything to add on?
Yes. I think apart from being a politician, Raila was also seen as someone who shaped the community thinking. And many times he spoke about it, this idea of keeping bodies for long. He said it is draining the bereaved families. And he was like, the person is dead, we should do this thing quickly, because sometimes people are left in debt. And he was always very vocal about it, that we should change the times, we should change this culture. And I think by putting that he wanted to be buried in 72 hours, he was leading by example, so to speak. And also, if you realize that in Luo culture, as a man, when you get married, you have a family, you move from your father's home, you go establish your own home. After you do that, if you die, you're buried in your own home. But we saw in Raila's case, he was buried in his father's home, which is also something he was also fighting for. He was saying, let us change the setup. That you don't go to every home and you find graves all over. Why don't we just put a common cemetery somewhere so people can get buried there? And that's what they did as a family, the Odingas. So that's why he was not buried in his own home, but he went and got buried in his father's home, where they have a family cemetery. So any of the Odingas who died is buried there. So
like a mausoleum. Yeah.
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 So that's what I wanted to add.
That's quite great. So, but I like also to add, Tom, as a communicator, how can media? So there's ethics in media, right? All professionals have ethics. So how can media report national loss without amplifying fear and trauma? Because you find some people you find when you go, I don't know, social media, you just find raw photos of people who've been injured, especially during these riots. And the good example is what happened in Tanzania. It was very shocking. I mean, you as a journalist, what is your thought? What are the ethics that people should do?
Okay. Now the problem is, now there's a very thin line, because now you say, so long as you have a smartphone, and bundle, you're a journalist. So these are people who don't have any rules governing them. An established media house will always have rules on how you report things. But now, before you go to print, or even before you go on air, somebody has taken pictures, splashing them all over. And that's now where the problem comes in. People can't really draw the line. But I believe we must have, any respectable media house must have standards. And I congratulate my friends in the media. They've tried their best to maintain those. It's very rare to see those gruesome photos in any mainstream media house.
Yeah.
And, but now the problem is most people will not wait for Citizen TV or for the Nation newspaper to come out to read. They'll have read the story on Twitter, on Facebook, but by the time you coming with their story, the story is out there, and then people are like, you media people now lumping the professional journalists with the quacks with their smartphone. That's where now the problem comes in.
Yeah, yeah. And I'd like to loop in Mweni as a grief therapist. Ondachi said a very interesting thing, and he said when people mourn, like people from the Western and Nyanza culture, it feels like it's finished, right? But I want to ask you, the question I want to bring to your attention is, do you feel that sense when you have clients coming in? Is there a difference in terms of culture when clients are coming in for therapy?
When people come in for therapy, remember that we grieve in the fullness of who we are. So if you're a lawyer, you'll grieve, you'll enter into this grief conversation in the fullness of who you are, in the fullness of your culture. If you're a whatever faith you are of, you will enter it into with the fullness of even your faith as well. And so yes, we do see cultural questions arising in the grief space. Let me remind you, a few years back we had the MP for Kibra, Ken Okoth. Ken Okoth asked to be cremated. And so again, there were questions around that. I don't know whether you remember, I can't remember which newspaper it was. I don't want to make a mistake and mention the wrong newspaper. But I remember one daily that said that had the picture of the late MP's mother asking about his son being burnt, And in the mind of an African mother, you burnt my son. Now, in the mind of the scientist, he was already dead. But remember that Africans don't die. We first die, and then we become the living dead. So the living dead are also feeling what's going on. So when you're the living dead, you're also feeling. That's how they are not able to really conceptualize what does cremation look like, because you're the living dead. So you must have felt the fire. And so when you think about that, you realize that then when we come into the therapy room, we are in the fullness of who we are, whether it is culture, whether it is education, what all those things show up when you come to the therapy room.
Okay. Tom, could you please you're moving, Tom, just maybe pause your, that's better. Pause yeah. Oh, and I like that. So it depends on you as a person, not really the culture where you're coming from, right? Yeah. So what I also want to ask as a grief therapist is the photos that people see on social media or on newspaper. What kind of grief do you call that? Because you can actually you don't really need to be there, but you can get a shock. What kind of grief is that? And do you get that in your therapy?
There are different types of griefs, and the one that comes, like I'm thinking about what Tom was saying about journalists. Now, journalists are not necessarily affected directly by the things that they go to view per se, but then they experience what we call vicarious grief. Vicarious grief is simply defined as a grief of being human. So if you go as a journalist to a school where recently when I say recently nowadays, there's an age where recently could be recently where Kibaki was president, just 20 years ago. But so those terms sort of get confused. But there's a school that was burnt down a few years back. And that school, the dormitory that burnt was mainly Form 1 and Form 2s. So I remember one of the policemen who went to the site was asked to go to the dorm himself, and he's thinking, my child is in Form 2, not in that school, but in another school. So he says, he went into that dorm, not as a policeman, but as a father of a girl in Form 2. You know,
Yes, yes.
so vicarious trauma is the grief that we feel for being human. I may not be a parent in that school, but I can put myself in the shoes of the other parents, and I can completely relate to how they are feeling. And sometimes the emotional response is so real, you actually feel the full physical response and of the emotions that the parents are feeling.
Yeah, yeah. You can actually feel, especially when you're watching TV, you're watching social media, that emotion is actually real. Pastor Ondachi, you want to add on to that? Just the raw image we get on social media on grief.
Sorry, I was going to finish and say that so when you get given the raw images that come on social media, even when you have not, remember it is shocking. So and unfortunately, when these things come on social media, nowadays I see people having an option of, do you want to view or not? Because some of us we don't necessarily have the same kind of shock absorbers. Some of us that can completely throw us off. If it's shared in your WhatsApp group and there's no option on whether you want to view or not. So that can completely throw us off. And I actually have personal experience of that, because a few years back, an auntie of mine was killed in a road accident. And before I could hear it from family, my family was actually trying to decide who's coming to break the news to me. Before they could come and break the news to me, social media happened.
Wow.
And so it's extremely unfortunate when we all rush to report news of death of people on social media, because my auntie was a politician, and while we are thinking, even the musician who passed on today, we are thinking she's a public figure, they are also owned by family. Remember that their children are on social media. So you can, and sometimes the immediate family members have not been given this information. So you are getting this information and you're calling the family and you're telling them Pole, and they're like, why are you telling me Pole? So,
Yeah.
so,
Wow.
so so death
Painful.
is very, very hard, and death of a loved one is very hard to take. But even how the news is broken is a very important component on the grieving journey. And that's why we find that as a society, and even socialization, we have all these sort of terms to sort of soften the blow. We've said they have rested. We've said they have gone to be with the Lord. We say amepumzika, so that it lessens the blow of raw hard, the person has died.
Yeah. That's very painful, being told news about your loved one through social media. Pastor Ondachi, I'd like to loop you in terms of crimination.
Yeah.
As a pastor, what are your thoughts? I know this is it's not yet there, but I would like to hear what are your thoughts, and when people who have relatives that have been criminated, have you met them, and what are their views? What do they go through?
Or my views on cremation.
Yeah.
Yes, I've been involved in quite in a number, perhaps 4. And again, it hit. It was in the will of the person who wanted to die. One was from Muranga, the recent one, and his mother was completely against it, and she, in fact, did not attend because, to an African mind, a cremation is not a burial. A cremation to an African mind is burning someone alive. And this thought is intense to us. I watched this poor mom wrestling with 2 things. One, my son is gone. Secondly, he wants to be burnt. That's exactly how she said it. And to her, it was a double tragedy. Financially speaking, culturally speaking, in terms of where our society needs to be moving, it is progressive. But culture is a lot slower than that. Like what Tom is explaining. Even someone in the stature of Raila Odinga, trying to shift how a culture thinks is a daunting task. He's probably the most authoritative person who can do it, but you can see that the culture itself turns around much more slowly. So there are two things we're dealing with. One is the head knowledge, the accepting it in our heads or on paper is one thing. It cuts down costs, but I remember walking this family up to this was very shocking, the recent one that we went to the Asian crematorium that is fairly well organized, but the whispers of people around were, first of all, why are they bringing us in Kiswahili? They were saying kwa Wahindi. That already is very brutal in our minds, that we don't know what these Indians believe in. You see, that's why it's very complex for Kenyans, because Kenyans don't even have trouble seeing Indians as if they are Kenyans, because they are Kenyan Indians. We're struggling with that. Kenyans have trouble. Luos and Luyas have trouble believing, why do Kikuyus do these things so quickly? So now when you jump 3, 4, 5 steps to cremation, it's still very early to begin to see whether this is okay. But more and more people are putting it in their will. And when the will is finally opened and you see how the news hits people you're talking to. Now, for me as a pastor, I'm usually around those left behind to condole with them, to be able to help them to accept how we're going to do this. And we have a standard procedure of how we usually do it. We expect there'll be meetings, and then we expect there'll be a fundraiser. Then we travel home, and you hear tributes, and you hear eulogies, really good things said about this person. And finally, we return the person to the soil. Now, one of the things we've never really paid a lot of attention to is even our liturgy and our burial program says ashes to ashes and dust to dust. Now, we usually say it, but it's not entering people's minds that you have mentioned ashes. And so to imagine the intensity of the pain that this person is feeling as you burn them, these are how Africans process it. They've not accepted that the body doesn't feel anything. But that's tough because we still speak of the dead in the present tense. And so we find it very, very hard to process that. So I see it in two ways, Rosalind. One, the idea of it is beginning a culture shift of sorts, but on the ground, it is not catching traction yet. Some people feel like, are you trying to make us like the Asian community? And number two, why are you changing our culture and customs? Number three, why are you burning yourself up? Benefits. So the action appeared at the crematorium. It appeared very simple. So I thought that the departed person wanted to make things simple. So they took the casket, and it was an electric crematorium. So they pushed the casket inside the oven and then shut the door, and all you needed to do was press a button, and then the oven starts to burn up. And so I thought that, okay, maybe whatever the departed thought we would do was simple. Let me tell you, Rosalind, the moment, even deciding who's gonna press the button was a big deal. And so decided the eldest son would do it, assisted by the wife, his mother. That moment right there, we would have needed Mweni to be there with us, because let me tell you, it's a simple button to push, but it took all the energy the family needed to do it. And so finally they called me to assist because they felt like they're doing something wrong. And so the three of us then went ahead and pressed. And the moment that sound came on, everybody fell apart. Everybody. So it
Painful.
was probably worse than would have been a burial. It's very neat, it's very quick, it's very clean. It was in the will, but the emotions were just as intense. And so we had to go through this whole thing again. And then after that, having to drive to Muranga to explain to mom and the relatives why you have not brought a body here. The family was denied entry. They had to take the ashes and still do a burial in Muranga because the mom said, I want to see a burial. And so they still had to go ahead and do that. So our culture is still very slow in accepting it, Rosalind, if that's what you're asking. In terms of processing it, the pain is the same, probably a little more, a little worse, because people now who live in Oshago, up country, cannot even begin to fathom what you've just done. And they will not allow you into the village to tell them that so and so, we in Luya, it sounds like we burnt him, we don't care, and we've left him there. Just to finish, my brother, one of my brothers passed on in 2015, and we who are Luyas buried him in Langata. Let me tell you, there was war. When we went home, the language was, so you decided to throw your brother away. That was the language. And it took long before we were forgiven. I think if it was not for my status as a pastor and a reverend, we would never have been allowed into the village. My uncles insisted bring some soil so that we do a ceremony here, and we said no. But they said, why did you leave your brother in the bushes? Now, can you imagine a cremation?
Yeah.
That's just another. Yeah.
You don't even have to say the people in the village who will not understand. Me sitting here, even as a therapist, I don't know. I'm just trying to imagine, and when you jump in here, is the pain of the wife and the son. Yes, the father is dead, but now you're switching on, and you know very well your father is going to get burned. I mean, that for me is so much. And we'll also tie it in terms of when a person is dead, brain dead in the hospital, and the doctors tell you, now you need to switch off that machine. Yeah. Those are two things that are extremely painful to anyone, any person. So I don't know. As a therapist, Mweni, please give us something that we can hold on to, because I'm already feeling that after hearing a Reverend story, I'm just feeling that pain already.
First of all, there's Reverend Onaji talks about it when he talked about the procedure. It looks nice, neat, and very, very clean, but it also feels distressing because it feels harsh. There's some, we tend to think that the burial process, everything around walking, and if I don't know, there's some denominations that do pretty fancy funerals. I don't know if any of you has been to a Salvation Army funeral. There's a step, stop, do the Bible reading, really fancy. And that whole ceremony makes the burial process feel sacred. So now, when that doesn't exist, it just leaves, it feels empty. It feels like harsh, like what are we being left with? Because somehow that process also feels comforting. Yeah. And then there's also the symbolic. the heritage around it, the ritual, the meaning, everything leaves a lasting marker, whether it is to inguo nilinunua ya mazishi ya, so what am I left with? There are no markers that I can carry with me and say, what, this was in the funeral of so and so. And then the reality is, like you've said, while we have some of us that have moved on and embraced cremation, there are still some of us that have not. And so it always brings a division within the family, And then there are people who, I haven't really thought about it. I really don't care about it. But are we honoring what the deceased wanted? Or are we, so there's always a group of for or against. So that also brings fragmentation in the family, because there's a divide. These are the ones that wanted to burn our son, and these are the ones that wanted to honor his wishes. So that also again complicates the grief season. And then sometimes it also feels like your grief is disenfranchised. Disenfranchised grief is where the grief is not acknowledged, the griever is not seen, or the relationship is not acknowledged. And you really, again, the process of how we do funerals allows all of us to bring our grief to the table. I don't know whether you see this, Rev, in church, when you say, and I know we do this in our church, when they say, can all family members stand up? Now, the more we do this as Africans, the more you'll have even his brothers, neighbors, cousins. We are all family at that point. And in church, we usually have to say, we are just calling the immediate family to come to the door, because everybody at that place is thinking, I am family. I was a brother's, neighbor's, cousin, sister, but we are all family because we are all African. And so we all want that connectedness. And then it is also ambiguous. It's an ambiguous grief. Because you see, there's no clear boundary of this was how he ended, and this is where the death begins, and this is where the journey of thereafter begins. It's all just blurry. So it adds on to the feeling of, it feels like they're still here because we didn't watch them go down. We didn't, there's that whole ceremony of watching the casket go into the ground. That didn't happen. And so again, we go back to the moral and the existential question of, did we fail them? Did we dishonor them? If they said to be buried and we cremated, or if they said to be cremated and we buried, did we dishonor them? And truth is, for most of us, we want to do right by the person who's dead. We want to honor their wishes. And that is why, as a nation, we actually honored Baba 72 hours, as much as was within the control of the realities, because 72 hours in India, dying in India, and 72 hours in Kenya are not the same 72 hours. But as much as possible, we actually did honor his 72 hours. But just wondering, did we dishonor them when the person asks for one thing and we do another? And just wondering, why did he dishonor us? As a family, we have a family mausoleum. This is the way we do things in this family. Why you insulting us in death by wanting to be cremated? We don't do that. Nobody in our clan has ever done that. So there's a lot of unfinished business that's left with cremation for many of us.
When you say all family members stand up, or when it's and when you look at the eulogy and your name is not there, it's a big deal that your name was left up. It's a big,
even in the newspaper, those adverts in the newspaper where you're paying for every word, everybody wants their name on that, so it's a big deal.
Part of grieving that my name was there, I'm related to so and so. That's why I'm thinking, when Honorable, and maybe Tom, now you can come in, when Right Honorable Raila Odinga died, everyone wanted to be part and parcel of the grief process. In fact, I told myself, am I the only one who has never taken a photo with Raila? And I think Reverend Dacha, you posted one.
I posted one,
Yeah, I think I was the only one who never took a photo. I didn't even, if I had one, I would have posted, because you want to feel like part and parcel of the journey of his journey.
Yeah.
And Tom, maybe I would ask you the responsibility of journalists in covering this kind of stories. When I watched the media houses, when immediately after Raila was buried, the people came in and they messed up the grave. In my mind, I was like, couldn't the media house stop just for that honor and just give us another story or take us somewhere? Must they? But why were they showing us the chaos on the graveside, or was it part of even us as the viewers mourning? What do you think? Did you see that? I don't know if you saw that. I don't know. Did you guys see that?
Yes, I did watch that, and
You did great.
I think what happened. Yeah, what happened was that it was a state funeral, so everything was being covered by the military. So immediately the military moved out. I think there was a breach in the security. The cops should have moved in immediately. Yeah, immediately the KDF guys took off. The cops should have gotten in. These people, they've been blocked from getting entry because the place was full. So they should have anticipated that these people would want to get in. And the question of, I agree with you. I think that the point they should have cut the live streaming because it was kind of anticlimax. This was a very regal ceremony, very solemn. And then at the end of it all, it ended in chaos. So in some people's minds, they wanted to shit the burial with the rowdy people who desecrated the grave, if I may say so. So I agree with you that actually that the point the live streaming should have stopped. But then again, maybe the people wanted to, but then again, maybe the people wanted to see everything right to the end. But I agree with you, Rosalind, that okay, Pasi, you want to jump in?
Yes,
yeah. I think let me jump in a little. I think let me use this example. It's a little wild, but if you build a house in a national park, you cannot start complaining that monkeys are passing outside your door because you're in their territory. We need to remember something.
That's a very good analogy.
Yeah, you cannot. You see, to the Luo culture, proximity to the dead body is important. It is like you're explaining, Mweni, between you and Rosalind, that for us we have to escort someone up to their very last journey. It is part of the process of healing, what the salvation journey does. These ceremonies are part of the dignity of the dead. I think when you used a very good word, it is sacred, and it is part of the healing process. Secondly, I heard Linus Kaikai of Citizen TV saying the breach at the airport when the body arrived was consistent with Raila Odinga's meeting when he was alive. And you're saying this was still Raila's show. People are not used to something being put between them and Raila Odinga. They are not used to it. And I have attended Raila Odinga's meetings. Raila Odinga is a man of the people. He joins in that crowd, in that melee. And the only person who could have told that crowd to calm down was Raila Odinga.
And he's not there, and he's not there.
Now you take him shags, and now you are in shags, Kabisa, in his village. These are guys who do funerals every week. They are not used to being denied to see a body touching the ground, the grave. They are not used to it. And the reason why the breach happened is because now they were saying, quickly close the grave. Now, this is a breach of culture. And the people there were feeling, how are we going to arrive? How are we going to live with ourselves when we did not escort Baba up to his very final resting place? state funeral or not, the Shags mentality cannot accept that. And then I think, Tom, you're the one who told me even Jaramogi was denied a state funeral by Daniel Arap Moi. So Luos were seeing a state funeral for the very first time. We need to forgive them for not knowing the protocols of a state funeral. According to them, Baba is our man. He's being buried. We want to escort him. We want to throw soil inside and to see that, the reason why they broke down that protocol was exactly because of that. They didn't care. KDF, military, president cannot be more important than my proximity to Baba. And so they just came in and everything was absolutely chaotic. It makes for a very good discussion. I think the consideration of the culture should have been put firsthand because we are in their territory and we need to be able to allow for now. The 72 hours could not have allowed it. Time was going. We had to bury, but the intensity of pain that people are going through to feel that they are going to be blocked out of leading Baba to his final resting place, it's what brought the chaos.
And you mentioned intensity of pain. There was one person this man from Meru, and actually I was watching, and he said his wife died the same day that Baba died, but he wants to come and bury his wife. He wants to come and bury Baba first, and then goes and bury Baba.
Yes.
I actually saw that and I was like, okay. So I don't know, anyone who can jump in and say what was going on to this. Maybe maybe you'll be the last one, but I'd like Reverend and Tom to jump into that.
Okay. This guy, he has a history with Baba. Actually, I think 10 years ago, when Baba lost election, then he went abroad for some time. Then this trend started, Baba, while you're away, this and this happened, and it became trending. Actually, it's the guy who came up with that clarion call.
Wow.
So now it happened that Baba dies the same day his wife dies. So the guy tells the people, no, we are going to hold on. Why are we holding on? I have to go bury Baba first, then come back. Then we'll continue with my wife's burial. So to him, Baba was more important. Burying Baba took priority over the wife's burial. And that gives you the kind of, when people talk about Baba and the passionate supporters, people think it's only Luos. But then you come to realize this person all the way from Meru to pause. And I'm sure the villagers there are asking, what's wrong with you? Unatoka huku nenda kuzika Mjaluo na unaacha bibi hapa.
The in-laws, he might have had problems with the in-laws.
The in-laws, the wife's family.
Yes.
So we told you not to marry this madman. Now you see.
And he's going to bury all the way in Bondo. What is your take as a pastor, Reverend Ondachi, when it comes to this kind of a person who leaves the wife and comes and bury another person, then goes and buries the wife, and actually announces it nationally? You'd have kept quiet, but actually told everyone.
Even I'm shocked to hear that, because again, for me, it's just the Raila Odinga effect on people. And that is what we all share as Kenyans. It's called the Raila Odinga effect. That what shocked me about Raila Odinga is Raila hardly ever paraded his wealth, hardly ever flaunted his power, and was not really big on security. Raila's security was the people who loved him. The number of times I walked up to Raila, one was in an official capacity when I was working at Mamlaka, and we wanted him to come and join our debate when we were addressing political issues. Accessing him was not very hard. And the other times would be you're sitting somewhere. I was in Serena one day, and then somebody whispers, "There's Raila." And you just walk up to him, and he is with one security guy, one. And it's Raila who would start smiling at you. And before you know it, you are talking like old friends and is cracking jokes. Then the other times were at Nairobi Club. He loved Nairobi Club. And you'd start talking to Raila, and he'd be the one who suggests that, "Oh, you guys, do you want to take a photo?" The photo I posted, he's the one who suggested and gave me the guy, "Why don't you take this photo?" So friendly. And now I think that's one thing for you to see Baba as a national figure. I can't even begin to imagine the intensity of now if Baba knows you, and the number of people who say how much trouble Raila rescued them from, how much Raila helped them, how much Raila rescued them, how much Raila did this for them. I think that effect is difficult to fathom. If when you knew him personally and he knew you back, I think that effect is difficult. And I can just imagine how I think I can identify if this man would be able to start saying, to describe the depth of his relationship with Baba, I think you would understand it. There was a selflessness about him, and a way that he used his power to go to the smallest person. When my father-in-law died in 2021, in the middle of preaching in Shags, the pastor was giving an amazing sermon. It was a BSF guy. In the middle of the sermon, everybody was following very carefully, until someone came and whispered something to the MC to tell the preacher. And then they said in Doluo that Raila has left Nairobi, is on the way here, he'll be here in 30 minutes. And the funeral scattered. It stopped. Like someone went to the dogs. Yeah. I mean, suddenly people started preparing a seat, and he was 30 minutes away boarding a helicopter. And the news suddenly spread to the crowd, and the pastor effectively stopped his amazing message in between. And people ran to the field to wait for Baba to come. This is the Raila effect. I mean, I just can't be able to explain the intensity. My mother-in-law was there, Raila came, and we felt so loved and honored that he showed up, made his contribution, gave his speech. It was right in the middle of COVID, and deeply comforted by his personal words, how he knew my father-in-law, and just Raila was just this mystery, this bomb of a human being who would make you feel like you're his friend. So I do understand why that man would say that. Like, I am not able to return the favor, what this man has done for me. I don't know their relationship, what it was, but I see it on his close friends, and I feel for them.
When would you want to jump onto that if client like that, if he was your client, what to do? What is your take on that?
I think it's important to remember that at all times, grief is about love.
Yeah.
Grief is about love, and it's about love that is now being, you're figuring out how to love the person differently, how to carry the love differently. And so it's a continuation of love, but it's also in the presence of loss. So it is, grief is saying, I loved and therefore I am in pain, you know? And then there are practices we have around grief, the rituals we have around grief. Those are about honor, you know? And so what we are saying is, because I loved you, I will honor you in this way because your life meant something. Your life mattered. You're not forgotten. And so rituals affirm the dignity of the person. they are the bridge, the bridge between the dead and the living.
Mm.
And so the rituals actually say, I honor you still. And so for this man as my client, I'd be wondering, okay, these choices that you have made, how do you think they affect the people around you? Because whether even if you don't come for therapy, by the way, we all find coping skills to live with the death of a loved one. So the question becomes, are they healthy or are they unhealthy? Healthy coping skills are skills that enhance your well-being now and in the future. Now, unhealthy ones are the ones that compromise your capacity now and in the future to engage with yourself and with the people around you. So the whole idea of my wife is dead, I will leave her, I will go and bury Baba. I would want to find out, did you have this conversation with the immediate family? Did they understand why it was important for you to go and bury Baba first and then come back? Because you may be surprised. Maybe the whole family understood the place of Baba in his life, so they did not have a
Yeah.
problem with him doing it. Whereas in other cultures, maybe the family would decide, you know what, you're gone, as we will proceed with burying our daughter. So we don't know enough to make a comment about that. But I can only imagine for him, there was no coming between him and Baba. And logically also, he could have also decided, Baba is only asking for 72 hours. We will come back and deal with this. So there are different perspectives on how this issue could have been looked at. But again, looking at enhancing relationship now and in the future. But also remember, a relationship to also consider is his relationship with himself. How will he feel about himself not having taken time to honor Baba in his time of death? You see, if the two deaths, if there was time, then maybe he would have gone there, we buried one, and then we come back and bury whatever arrangements would have been made. But you see, with Baba, there was no time. So I actually can understand his decision. I cannot understand his love, but I can understand his decision.
Yeah. I like that his relationship with himself. He needed to be comfortable with himself first, because that is what matters. And I want maybe Tom and Reverend Ondachi to jump in. We're looking at Ida, and I, as a wife, also, I don't know, I really feel for her because she has to keep on escorting visitors to the grave. Right? It is okay if I walk by myself and have my 5 minutes at the graveside. But see, I'm trying to imagine how she's feeling every time she has to walk. And maybe she has like, let's like even maybe there are 5 visitors per day. Or she's like, some are going by the major ones, she has to escort them. I don't know. Is it cultural to do that? Is it because Raila was a leader? I mean, just explain to us, what is all that?
Tom?
Tom, are you with us?
Yes, I'm here.
You heard my
Yes, I'm
question?
here.
Yes.
Okay. Yes, I heard you. One thing according to Luo culture, is the widow has to be there even after burial for some few days. And normally what happens, people will come and ask you, so how did the death happen? And you'll retell this story time and again. Aligonjeka kutoka siku hii tukapole. In the same story you'll repeat over and over again. Now coming to Mama Ida as a person, now the platform is huge. It's a bigger stage. And I think she's taking it in her stride because she knows when she signed up to live with Raila, I think she knew this is what it will take. and she's handled it so well.
Yeah.
And also, I think this has been part of her life, welcoming visitors when Raila was alive. So I think she's just continuing what she used to do when Raila was alive. But I think also there come a time when the visitors will dry up sometime, or maybe she'll not be there, but people will still be going there. So it be she'll be forced, the family will be forced now to hire someone to be the official taking people around the grave. But so far it's within the custom because she's called in Dolo, she's called Minpin, the mother of the country.
Yeah,
Yeah, so
yeah.
everybody except when you go to see the mother of the country, Minpin. So Minpin will always be there to welcome you. So she's just, I think also it goes to the Luo tradition that the wife of the care or the leader of the, usually the first wife, because back then they used to have many wives. So the first one play that role. And so far, I think most of the visitors there have been very, very pleased. I remember when former Vice President Kalonzo Musyoka went there, and the MP of Embakasi South, where I live, Mawade, shocked everyone. She spoke in fluent Zulu for the entire time, and even Mama Aida was impressed. This is a Kamba who's gone to Bondo and calling Mama Aida Minpin and telling her in Zulu everything. And everybody, I think he got more applause than even Kalonzo.
Yeah.
So, and I think they will continue. Yeah, but I only hope with the time she'll take a rest. But she's still strong enough for it. Why not? You only mourn once. Yeah.
Yeah. I'd like to imagine.
Reverend?
Reverend is dropped off. I know he's coming. He'll add on to that. But when he's there, I'd like to imagine maybe Mweni. Do you think, in my mind, I'm like, even visiting that grave could be part of grieving, could be part of the journey of going to the healing and acceptance to the widow. So what is your take on this? I'm trying to imagine she's going there like, let's give an average of 3 times a day. Yeah, or 5 times a day, because there are many visitors there.
I think, remember what we said earlier, that we grieve in our cultures and the fullness of who we are. At this point, and I know we had this conversation on a certain social media platform. At this point, I think it's actually God's hand that Minpin is from that community. So she understands the importance of being there, receiving visitors, taking them to the grave and coming back. She's in that space wholly. Also as a daughter of that community. Now, I'm guessing that if you put someone from Central Kenya there, they'll probably be really worn out by all these people coming. They'll be worn out by the hosting, and whether even other parts of the country, including my own people from the East, will probably be weighed down with all this hosting. And you almost want to retrieve back to the city and the isolation and to grieve in isolation. But if you look at people from the western part of the country, they grieve in community. So I look at her and I'm amazed. I think for me, this is the one time you're beginning to see the power of Mama Ida, the grace with which she carried herself. And it's a grace. I'm sure it's not this. And I even looking at her and listening to her speak, it's not a put on grace or put on power or put on kindness for the people who are coming. It's something that she embodies for real. And so you see that over the years. And I guess that part of it also comes with being married to a man like Raila, because he was a man of different people and different seasons and different places. And so she learned to take it all in stride. But I feel like there's also an element, because when I look at her, there's something very regal about her and about the way she's receiving people, taking photos with people and doing that whole thing. She's looking very regal around it. And I'm feeling like this is the time to say that for the life of Baba, there's a sense in which he planted that there's a statement that says, you plant a tree and you will not sit under the shade of that tree. So Baba is the one who planted this person that we are all grieving, but he never got to sit under that shade. He never got to see him get the state funeral, all the state power that was, people, we joked about it and were saying the government can deliver a project in 72 hours and it is neat, it is well coordinated. They did that. And so Baba probably never got to see that for himself in his life. But Mama Ida is now sitting in that tree, and I think she's carrying it all in stride. I am hoping that somewhere along the way, because I read that, and Pastor Odachi confirmed this when we were saying that appointments are up till January. I'm hoping that somewhere along the way, she will actually get time to physically breathe.
Yeah.
Because grief does come with fatigue. And this is not just fatigue of the grief itself. This is also the fatigue of the rituals, because you wake up every day and there's this guest coming and you have to entertain and you have to host. It's 8 to 5 job, Monday to Friday, Monday to Monday. So there's going to be a fatigue that will come around it. And I'm hoping that when the cameras are not rolling, she's getting time to rest. She's getting time to catch her breath. Because what can also do is that, unfortunately, it can also complicate your grief. But on the other hand, remember, the complexity of grief is that the one thing that can, the same, while for one person, it can complicate their grief, for another person, it can it can ease their grief. So in going and visiting Baba and just being around the grave, she's moving towards healing. Whereas for another person, it would be slowing down their healing, because we all manage grief as individuals.
Yeah. Is it possible for someone to be numb? Just to numb yourself, no feelings, no emotions. You're just following you're like on auto drive, because you just want this thing. And if that's possible, what will happen after?
And that's the dangerous thing, because numbing can happen at any stage, but mainly numbing happens at the first stage, which is shock. So you disconnect, and so you don't process. What can happen after is now coming back to Nairobi, and the reality of, oh my goodness, this is the bedroom that Baba used to sleep in. That's a chair that Baba used to sleep. He's not here anymore. The reality of those things hitting now can be the things that will trigger. Yeah, so right now, being
around people,
up country and being around people can make it, you can be thinking it's like he's away. When we go back to Nairobi, our life will assume a sense of normalcy, and then he'll come back. So it's both. Again, remember, I say that's a complexity of grief. It can only be, only she can tell us where she's at.
Where she is at, Pastor Ondachi, we're just discussing the Ida as a widow. What is your take? Because she has to keep on escorting people to the grave over and over again. So what is your take on that?
Thank you. Yeah, I apologize. I was off for a minute. We had some kind of power surge. I think that Ida is, I think we are doing things in reverse. When somebody dies, people come to condole with the family, and the widow receives people until such a time that the crowd feels they have spoken at the funeral meetings enough, and then we go to stage 2. And usually that's a very tiring time for the family. It's very exhausting. You don't sleep well. You are receiving delegations after delegations after delegations. And like Tom said, you're explaining to them over and over what happened. And then it naturally ends when you lay the body to rest. this is exactly, I think, what some doctors call the invisible hand when you go through an amputation, that the brain finds it difficult to believe the hand is not there anymore and continues to function as if you have a hand. So by Raila being buried in 72 hours, our minds are still on a 3-month stretch. And so even with the body in the ground, people want to feel that they have condoled with the family. And even the person I was with yesterday is still at, when are we going to Bondo to pay our respects? And that's when we checked, and they said the earliest date now is January 3rd. That's the earliest you can go. People feel that they have to go and condole with Ida. And Ida has to play the role of grieving widow. She has to be there. And she has to receive my condolences as a person who, and she, I think she's very clear in her mind that Raila belonged to the people. And I think she's being extremely gracious to Kenyans to welcome them. She says, we welcome everybody. She understands this culture very well. She has respected the wishes of her husband, but she has continued to serve him as she did all those years, to be able to receive his delegations, to host his dinners, to continue to receive his guests. She is still Raila's wife and is doing what is proper with the culture in allowing people to grieve, people to mourn. And she did say it herself. Whoever wants to come, you're welcome. There'll be enough food for you. There'll be enough of us to welcome you. She has not said she's exhausted. She knows what her role is and continues to play it. Because it's exactly what would have happened if Oburu, for example, had said, we'll bury Raila in March next year. And
You
if
say
Baba had
that?
not indicated the 72 hours,
Oh,
this exactly what would have happened.
wow. March
Delegations would
next
have
year.
gone.
March next year.
I mean, I'm exaggerating it, of course, but
Oh,
there are Nigerians who, Kofi Annan was buried after 4 months, I think. Tom, I think you're the one who told me about it. West Africans are very elaborate with this thing. The greater you are,
the
then
more prolonged.
the longer it takes. So, I mean, it's just the way it is. So, if the family had said, we will receive delegations until such a time as Baba Spirit says now it's enough, we would never have seen the end of this. So, but I'm saying we're doing it in reverse because the culture has refused to let this go. And so people will continue to come and say pole to Ida until such a time as it dies naturally. But I'm not sure, because this is going to turn into a political something as next year turns.
Oh, yeah. Well, I just want to maybe Tom, you can jump in here in terms of our previous president Uhuru Kenyatta, when he was talking during the friend's funeral. Yeah. I just want to ask, is why is it, and I think somebody asked, I think it was Reverend Dutch, why is it that African leaders, or maybe just leaders generally, do not talk about their illness so that they can start preparing people? Because people are not immortal. One day, we're all going, yeah? So why is it that, and I think Uhuru Kenyatta said something that was very clear. I don't know if the media picked it up and about his sickness and something, I don't know. Which was, if it is true, it was a very good thing.
He didn't outright say what was ailing him, but there was that insinuation that he was talking at the field service of the late Frank Kireri, who was the former MD of Housing Finance. And he said that they walk together the journey. So he didn't specifically say that. What was insinuated or what I got from there is that he's also been having some health issue, which he didn't say, which was quite brave of him. Uh, uh, Yesterday, I was reading a very good story by a friend of mine called John Kamau in the Sunday Nation newspaper. He was doing obituary of a former editor-in-chief of a Nation newspaper called George Gidhi. George Gidhi was this bold journalist. Apparently, back around 70s, the day Jomo Kenyatta suffered a stroke, and nobody could speak about it. But George Gidhi went ahead and wrote about it in the newspaper. It became a big story, and everybody was rushing to cover up. So the state of the judicial statement that is just mildly indisposed. This brings the question, especially African leaders. We have this thing. We want to create a mystery around them that they are superhuman, that they can't get sick, they can't die, and those. I think the West is different. If the president doesn't appear in public for 2-3 days, question be asked, and the White House or wherever the country it is, they'll have to explain. Okay, the president got admitted because of this and this. We saw with Joe Biden, any small problem is not all we are told. And I think this one will demystify all these things, that at the end of it all, we are human. But also, I think African leaders fear the instability that might come with it. That if, for example, God forbid, if President Ruto were told today, President Ruto is admitted on a Nairobi hospital, social media will be awash. You saw last year, some people even creating coffin and things like those. So the whole idea is to create some aura and invisibility. Yes, around the president, that he's not a common man like you and I, which I think is not a very good idea. We should know the president is sick. The same way I can get sick, my family member can get sick, to get admitted hospital. It led to demystify the whole thing. That's what I think.
But in the US, we could say even then they hid a lot when it came to Joe Biden, and we could actually see this guy is not well. But they took like forever, and they were still campaigning for him to become president until they gave Kamala Harris how many days to campaign. So I think it's all the whole world. I think they don't want to. Sorry. Yes. Continue, Tom.
Actually, that's another problem also, because you find the presidency is not about the person sitting on the seat. A lot of vested interests. The powers, or what we call the deep state. So they want, let's show some signs of stability where we are and things like those.
And Mweni, what type of grief is that? I mean, this person is sick, anticipating that something will happen. Do you, as a therapist, what do you take on that? Would it be easier when, I know there's nothing easy, but would it be less painful when this person has been sick and the Lord takes them than just a sudden one?
Definitely how a person dies has a role in how the grief manifests. When someone has been sick, we tend to assume that we have gotten used to the idea of them dying. But really, we are creatures of hope. That's why even when someone is sick, critically sick, we still will take them to hospital, because we are believing that there's something that the doctors can do to help them be restored back to health. So that the kind of grief that we go through when when you're in that space, when someone is critically sick, and maybe even the doctors have told you that currently, given the state of this person, we are only managing the pain. That is actually called anticipatory grief. It's a kind of grief that is there's something looming. There's something looming. And sometimes it tends to be more scary than the death itself, because in death there's a finality to it, and we almost sometimes know what to do when the person dies. But when you're in that space of anticipatory grief, there's decisions to be made. You remember that's a conversation we're having around to switch off the life support. There are all these kind of complex decisions to be made. And sometimes even in the case of leaders, not just presidents, you find that sometimes they want to be careful in how they manage the news, because there's a way in which they can create instability. Death has happened and everything tends to, and that's the hard part, where things tend to rotate around a personality and not around the structure and the system that has been laid out. So if the person dies, the system crashes. So then you want to manage that information very well. But there is no easy way to announce the death of a leader and the death of a president, or in our case, the death of a former prime minister, because remember that as a nation, we look to him. I mean, he was Baba to all of us. So we look to him for direction. We look to him to tell us, do we go for Mandamano? Are we accepting this election results? So there's a sense in which he spoke, and we felt that he has spoken on our behalf. Remember, even when they were saying that if Baba has read the Constitution, we don't need to read it. And Tom talked about just the imagining of the death of a president. I mean, this is a country where a few years back, imagining the death of a president was treasonous. So now announcing it must also come with some bit of weight. Yeah.
Yeah. Pastor Dachi, and now I would like to address you as a pastor for this question.
Maybe if I can just add to what
add. Yeah, please. Yes.
Yeah, actually, that imagining the death of a president was put into the constitution by Charles Njonjo. Kenyatta was very sick, and everybody knew Kenyatta. It was a matter of time. They knew he had a heart problem, and they was already jostling for power. And then Njonjo, being keen that is one of the guys who might one day take over from Kenyatta, put it into law that even imagining the death of a president is treasonable. Now, the funny part about this is that I'd be seated here next to you, Rosalind, then I say, Rosalind, you know what? Vile nimekuona, you're imagining the death of a president. So it'll be up to you to prove that you're not thinking that.
Yeah. Even imagining was treason.
Yeah. By God's grace, it was removed from our status.
Yeah. And that is very true. I can imagine those days of multi-party when people are like in a James Orengo. I was just about to join the university campus. I was at Gen Z that time. There was a lot of uproar that time of multi-party, and we thank God for that multi-partyism. But as we're about to close up, I just want to ask Pastor Ondachi, is there a place where church and culture meet in terms of mourning the death?
Yes, Rosalind, there is. The church has had to assume a lot of roles that our cultures and traditions should have taken, and also government should have taken. So the number of churches I've led, we found ourselves in Mavuno, for example, refurbishing primary schools, toilets. That's government work. Church has also found itself in the place, especially in Nairobi, in the cities, where we are doing rites of passage for teenagers. That is the work of culture. And so the church has a very, very powerful role in our society. And the church is perhaps the safest place to be able to help people to find neutrality in being able to handle this. Because as Africans, the line is thin between the line is very, very thin between culture and God. That line is very, very thin. And people, in spite of how much struggle the church in Africa has had, people still trust the church very, very strongly. And so the church is the place where church leaders would be the person. No wonder politicians love the church a lot, because they know that people put a lot of faith in their leaders and in their pastors. And so when something like this happens, it would be acceptable if the bishops and the pastors and church leaders were to be the ones to make this announcement. People would receive it with a lot of grace and prayers, and people would congregate around that and believe the voice of the church. And so I think that the church needs to take a much stronger position. I didn't see it very strongly in the death of the former prime minister. But for Jomo Kenyatta, the church was very much there. The Catholic Church was very, very present. Also for Mwai Kibaki, very present. And when people see the bishops in their robes, and they see the ceremonies, and they see the solemnity with which this is accepted by the church, people tend to calm down. I've been invited into homes to break the news of death to families. And sometimes doctors have told me, the man is gone, but we're waiting for you to come so that you can break the news to mama. And at that point, I'm aware that it is not me who they're asking to do it. They want to hear it from God. And for them, that will be comforting. It will be acceptable. They feel like if you make the announcement, our family will accept it better. Also, give us direction on what to do from here. And at that point, then you're aware of how important the church is, the voice of the church is. They want you to say the final prayer over this man who's gone. We want you to escort him to go. I have been to places where I've had to be the one to close the eyes of the deceased and pull a sheet over his face, because the family members can't do it. They feel like now this is God's business, and we need to be able to now be the ones to take over. And for our national leaders, it's the same. It's just as important. When prayers are said, when rituals are followed, when the church is the one that stands between God and the people. And so at that point, then people want to hear from God. They want to hear from the word of God. And irrespective of what the person has done, when they die, it is to the church that people look. And so it's a very critical question and moment. I have been arrested for violating a traffic law when I'm on my way to a funeral. And so the cop was arresting me. I told him, you have rightfully arrested me. I don't deny it, but I'm late to go to a funeral. And the cop told me, all right, it doesn't matter. The law is the law. Of course, he was trying to instigate towards a bribe. And there I was, and I told him, arrest me, but if that family fails to bury their dead before I arrive, it's on you. The cop suddenly said, apana, apana.
And then
I don't want the consequences of such a curse from a family. But the family was waiting. The family said, we are waiting for the pastor to come and bury our person. And so I told him, you escort me if you think I'm lying. We go do the burial, then I can come to the police station. And he told me, no, mchungaji, wewe enda ufanye kazi ya Mungu, because there's that reverence around who buries the person, and who announces the news and who comforts families. It is church. The local church, the national church is so critical to a nation.
That's very true. Interestingly, whenever there's death, church always comes in. I've never been anywhere whether the person believes in church or not, church always comes in. There's always either worships, prayers, or something. It's always church checks in. So maybe now it's we're about to finish. I'd like to have us to have each of you. Thank you so much for coming, but I'd like us to have a parting shot. just your thoughts on this conversation on shock and the nation. I'll start with Tom, then Pastor Ndachi, then when you end with us.
I think this has been a very good discussion, and I'm just excited that we continue with it. And the whole issue is that even without death, people grieve for so many things. I think we can carry this conversation forward going onwards. And just to finish, my part in short is it's a bit hilarious. In 2011, the president of North Korea died, and everybody was expected to mourn. And actually, undercover policemen were deployed in the streets of Pyongyang and all the other major cities. Their work was to see who was not sad enough. But if you appear like you're smiling and the president's dead,
oh my God,
you get arrested. Now, comparing that to the emotion we saw during Baba's death, the one for Baba was genuine. You don't need policemen to police the mourners.
Yeah.
Thank you, guys. I really enjoyed the
Thank you, Tom. And you know, it's not only there. Even in the Luya culture, if you don't cry, your question, hatukumwona huyu akilia. Yeah, you have to cry or look sad. Why are you laughing during when people are mourning?
Yes.
Pastor Ndachi, parting shot.
Thank you, Rosalind. I really appreciate you for getting this conversation going. I feel personally, I've felt therapy listening to Mweni and yourself and Tom. I have felt therapy with the journalistic angle, the social media thing, Mweni's professionalism around grief. I'm not sure whether I had mourned Baba myself. I have to say that I was not a big fan of Baba's politics. I really wasn't. And it's only when he died that I realized a great injustice surrounded him. And so I'm a Johnny come lately in appreciating the intensity of this man, especially I had a different view of the handshakes. Until he died, I realized they were handshakes of peace. I was not seeing them that way before. And then the great effect he had on so many people. And so I've been a bit lost because I only voted for Baba. I didn't really vote for Baba in 2022. I was voting against William Ruto. And so I felt there's no other candidate, so let me vote for Baba. But in other elections, I didn't vote for him. I voted for Uhuru Kenyatta the other 2 times. But my heart has been unsettled until today. So just listening to all of you and talking about this has helped me to settle. And I feel in my heart that I look forward to the next discussion. I think it's a very well put together panel. The professionalism is excellent. The conversations are great, Rosalind. The moderation is very professional. I really want to appreciate you for thinking of this idea. I look forward to, I can't even imagine what it would be like with a greater audience listening in. I think our nation needs this. And I want to encourage you to continue. Get us together again next Monday. I'm looking forward to it and looking to circulate the poster wider just so that we can enjoy. I think many other people will feel. I'm so politically charged myself. I feel like I have a significant role to play in how our nation thinks politically and thinks as a church and how we're evolving as a people. Conversations like this are important for people because I know, like that person who was telling Tom, is Baba really dead? There are people who still don't believe it. And so our conversation is very critical. And I want to appreciate you, Rosalind, for this.
Yeah. And I also want to appreciate Mweni for even helping us organize this. And maybe Mweni, your parting shot as a grief therapist.
I think it was a necessary conversation even for us. outside of the participants, even just for those of us that are in the room tonight. I think it is important for us to remember that grief is the emotions that arise out of loss. One of the most powerful breakdown of emotions is a lecturer of mine who said emotion is energy in motion. And so when we allow grief, grief moves through the body, because if we don't allow it to move through the body, it becomes trapped in it. And so we are cultural people. We have a people of culture, different cultures as it may be, but there's also the Kenyan culture. And so the Kenyan culture gives the body permission to speak about pain, but also the church. And the church gives the soul permission to speak the language of hope, so that we, even as we are grieving, may we not grieve as a people without a hope. And I pray that this hope will sear through us as Kenyans, and we will rally towards healing together, not just grieving together, but also healing together. Because I also, in a large way, tend to believe that that's what Baba would have wanted. Yeah.
Well, thank you very much. We are done with today's conversation, 2 hours from 7 to 9 p.m. Next Monday, I hope we'll have a larger audience, and we'll be discussing when grief divides instead of uniting us. What happens and why does it divide? So let's all meet, same platform, next Monday. And bye.
God bless you guys.
Asante sana. Good night and God bless.
Yes.